Well, welcome back to First Down in Life. Got a very special guest for everyone tonight. Head coach Chad Griffin from Hart County High School. Good to have you, Coach, and glad to be back with Coach Richey.
Glad to be back.
And it's always good to have Brian Pickerel. But, Chad, this is something that I noticed. I've been keeping up with you the last couple of years, just kind of watching. I really got to watch as we've talked off the mic. We got to talk about your Little League program.
Yes, sir.
That looks stellar. But is it okay for me to say that perhaps you're the most successful head football coach in Hart County's history?
I guess you could if you want to. To me, there's a guy, and if you give me, I think of his name, Mike Cundiff. That I feel like if he had coached there a little bit longer, the football program would have been turned around a long time ago. He actually coached 3 seasons, had 3 winning seasons.
And what year?
He would have been 88, 89, and a lot of people talk about things we haven't done, but back then people don't realize that only the top 2 teams went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And they beat. He was the only other coach to beat Glasgow in '88, and they ended up getting beat by Monroe County, who Glasgow ended up beating, and that knocked them out of the playoffs that year. So there's been a little bit of success,
John
and
Boy Ross era.
He had a good run there, and some things happened something happened, and he ended up not coaching there no more. And
So
he's still in the
point
county.
being,
though.
we could arguably say
We could.
that we're sitting at the table with the most successful Hart County head football coach.
I appreciate that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, I'm going to hit him in the head a little bit. I'm not Nostradamus by any means, but a few years ago when we were working in the Little League program, I saw Hart County's Little League talent.
Absolutely.
And I made the comment to you and to Brent and
Yes.
all the people around. I said, if those
It's
kids stay together, it's coming.
Yeah.
I said, they've got the right mix of kids if they can get the right coach.
Mm-hmm.
So hats off to you for
Thank you,
being the
guys.
right coach at the right time, because
Absolutely.
a very successful tenure thus
Well,
far.
I appreciate that. And there's a lot that goes into that, and you guys know as well as I do for Little League. The thing about Little League is having the right people in their Little League too. Mm-hmm. And
sir.
heading it up. And I got to give a big props to Anthony Childers. We call him Chili Bean, but he's run the Little League since I've been here, and he was running before I got here, and he's done a really good job of getting kids out and getting the right people coaching those kids. Since I've been here though, we've the Little League mimics us. What I mean by that is they're doing the same thing we're doing, and they're under center and they're double wing, or they're doing stuff we do, and that really helps. And we're priding ourselves in running the football and being tough, and that's what they're doing in Little League.
I noticed they were already pulling guard and tackle
Yes.
in 6th grade.
Yes.
And 5th grade, for that matter.
That was
It was
We'll
it was
give you a
sight to
false read, or
behold.
we'll give you a true read.
There you go. I appreciate it. Anyway, but no, there's a lot that goes into that. And when I took the job here, that was one thing that I was really worried about was Little League, and it was. And I don't want to take credit for that because it was well on its way before I got here. Okay, they Chili Bean was in place, and Jonathan Shoulders and Paul Bradley and those guys were well on to doing things. Coach Avery was doing it, so. The Little League was moving when I got here.
You hear what he's saying. I don't want to interrupt, but I am. Every successful coach that I've talked to in the past several years talks about alignment vertically, horizontally, of getting the terminology. You don't want, if you've got 4 middle schools, say you're in Hardin County and you've got 4 middle schools, you don't want one running the wishbone, one running the spread, one running the wing tee, and somebody else running a pro-style offense. And then they don't know the terminology. Then you've got to reteach everything. And so this is really good that you guys are doing that.
And the philosophy in my thinking in that is it's no different than being in math class. I mean, if you don't align the stars all the way up through, how are you going to know math? And that's kind of my thinking. If of course everything's dumbed down at that age, it just gets a little bit more complicated. And we do a youth camp and put it some of our, but for the most part, everybody's been bought into it, and it's been fun. It's been really fun, but I don't know that you could do it any other way. And I do want to say this. I want to say thank you to the administration, because very few places you get to go, and I get to run I'm the AD, the district-wide AD now, and we run everything all the way down to our youth Little League.
That's awesome.
So it gives me that. I don't have to deal with somebody else wanting to do it because they don't want it, then they just don't. If the Chili Bean didn't want to do what we asked him to do, then we can ask somebody else to do it because we're going to pay you.
Right.
So they've invested money and stuff into this too, and it's really helped. It has.
A few questions for you, Coach. What's your favorite breakfast cereal?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Love me some Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Bar none.
Yes.
Coach is Count Chocolate.
Count Chocula.
Ain't nothing wrong with that one either.
I'm Fruity Pebbles.
I had Fruity Pebbles the other night for supper, so there you go.
Best Christmas present you ever got? You wasn't ready for this, was he?
No, but I'm going to say this, and you're going to think I'm sappy, but just getting to spend with my family. I mean, seriously. I mean, honest goodness, it just, I got a good family, and I got just have. I'm not a gift. You can ask anybody. You don't have to get me gifts. I don't want gifts. I'll give you all the gifts you want, but I don't care for gifts. But just being with my family, honest goodness, it's
absolutely.
I missed a lot of Christmases with what I did in the fire department, and so just being with my family every Christmas. That's the best gifts I've had.
Best fisherman sitting at this table.
I'm gonna have to go with me. I don't know what you can do.
Hey, I caught more fish today than both of you combined.
I was busy working.
Yeah, you have.
Today.
Hey, I had
There
to.
is food in the freezer right
There
now.
you go.
So where'd
Where's
you
it
go?
at? We're starving
It's
to
down
death.
there in the freezer.
Where did we go to?
We can cook it up. We went to the bridge.
Get the peanut oil and the Zatarains.
There we go. I can't tell you where I caught them, but I caught them.
All right, Coach. 4th down and 1. 50-yard line. 3 minutes on the clock. What do you do?
Am I on offense or am I on defense?
You're on offense.
I'm running.
What are you going to do?
I'm running XB. And a lot of people don't know that.
For
but I
the
can tell you
listeners,
this.
explain.
I can tell you this. I'm gonna tell you a little story. So we was watching Super Bowl. I was at home by myself. Well, I was by my wife and my daughter was home. My son was off doing his stuff. But I get a phone call from one of my players, and it was 4th and 15 or 3rd and 15. He said, "Coach, you're gonna run XB here, aren't you?" So XB, for those of you who don't know, in the wing T terminology, is pretty much it's a belly play. It's an ISO play. We lead with back and hand it to, but it's got a little. We block it different ways, different what you give us, but we love it. We for those who don't know, we run the wing T. I'm a traditional wing T guy, so. And you could be two ways. I don't know if people on watching may not know a guy by the name of Mark Brown, Coach Brown. Mm-hmm. He was successful everywhere he's been. Marion County,
Dude's been
Nelson
successful
County,
everywhere he's been.
John Hardin, E-Town. He ran the wing T through his wings. Mm-hmm. I run the wing T through a fullback.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, so it's pretty much.
So that's much more traditional style wing T.
So we're running XB. And you're going to know we're going to run it. And you're going to know we're going to run it.
I'm glad you're not punting.
I'm not.
That's what we said last week.
That's what I didn't want to hear.
Hey, it got me beat once this year. Casey came well off district championship. Now I was stubborn, but if I got, I'd do it again.
All right,
yeah, there you go. We like it. We're on the right page. All right, here we go. Nightmare. 3rd down and 8. 3rd down and 8. What's your go-to play?
Counter crisscross. No, I'm going to take that back. We're going to run Sally. So Sally is a play for us. It's similar as a draw. We block it, play side as a draw. Backside we're driving out, but it's a misdirection. We're going to fake it one way, and we're going to hand it underneath, and the guy's going to find his hole. We kind of just pick his hole and go. We don't throw the ball. Okay, if you're a quarterback, you don't want to come play football for me unless you can run. Okay, I say that jokingly. I've had kids throw for thousands of yards, and I had a kid at Central Hardin, Reese. He threw for 1,500 yards, ran for 1,000 yards. So, but we don't throw. And we were talking the other day. I can count since I've been the head coach there. This is my 7th season. There's a lot of times I've won a football game and throw the pass. Mm-hmm. And,
that's a great night's sleep.
And you know what? And it's kind of like this. When I was at Central and in the spread, it was fun.
Yeah.
But I had ulcers.
Yeah.
Because it's like running the option. There's too many things that can go wrong.
What's the old saying? There's
three
things.
Far behind the chain.
3 things can happen on a pass play, and 2 of them's bad.
That's right.
Yeah.
Same thing with option. You got to make the pitch. You got to make the read. So you're asking me, I'm running the ball. Okay. Yeah. And my goal is not to be in 3rd and 8.
Mm-hmm. So what about these teams that crowd the box on you, Coach, and play games with you? You just find a way to out scheme them up front and change blocking scheme.
We don't change. We do what we do. So the way we do things is the way we do it, and then we give our guys rules. They got to know the rules, and then I know I'm speaking French, but like a center, his rules on away. That's his rule. Mm-hmm. And I don't care how many people you bring up. We're going to on away, and we're going to down block, and we're going to kick out, and we're going to do things that we can do up front when we're not big, and we're going to do things we can do up front when we are big. Yeah. And it's the same. And those guys that crowd the box, they still have to make the tackle, and they still have to get us before we get going downhill. And it's like this, if I wasn't running the wing T, would I run the option? Yes, because I don't care how good they are. they're still 15, 16, 17-year-old kids.
Yeah. That's right.
And you can teach them to run every key. And I can tell you how to stop a wing tee. I can tell you the worst defense out there for me to run, and you can go try and do it. But to get that linebacker not to run with motion after we've run jet sweep 1,000 times, he's going to run with motion.
He's going to run with
So even crowding the box, and there's ways we can uncrowd the box and still run the football.
Well, that I was leading up to that without having a screen game or throwing the ball. You said you don't want to throw much. That was always our thing in the spread. We count the guys in the box. We find Mike. We're going to create mismatches. And so I'm not a wing tee person.
Right.
So this is good for me to get to talk with people and see schematically.
So what
how
you just
people
said,
are thinking. Yeah.
literally what you just said is a numbers game, right? So we're going to count just like we did when I was in the spread. If you had a 5-man box, run the ball. If you gave it a 6-man box, we're going to throw the ball.
Yeah.
So, and for you, you people out there, and you know this, that Tony Franklin's a big, hey, you're going to run quick screen because you're going to get the defense running sideline to sideline. We're just going to run rocket. So rocket is this toss, and we're not going to block anybody from the defensive end back. We're not going to block them.
Coach, what happened to me is I bought into Tony Franklin, and I said, we're going to wear the defense out. But what I forgot is I didn't platoon. I was running the same guys on offense and defense. I was wearing our own guys out. So it was like, all right.
Well,
anyway.
And it's funny you said that because when I was at Central with Mark Perry, which is a very successful coach. He is the guy at UK right now. He is the head recruiter. He is the football operations. He's doing everything for them. And when I was fortunate to coach for him at Central, and we platooned, and it worked. Yes. It was great. But not many times you got 115 kids on your football team.
That's the tough
especially
part.
at Hart County. Right. So, when he left and Mark Perry and Tim Madeline came in and took over, we lost a lot of kids. They didn't want to flip tires and they didn't want to run a wing tee and they didn't want to do all that stuff. Right. I believe that's what you have to do if I was at Male or Bowling Green, I may do something different.
Right.
But I know what I'm doing right now from the ground up, whether I got athletes or I don't have athletes or I have big linemen or I got a 145-pound guard, we can win.
Okay. People at home, folks at home, Little League, seamless alignment, being true to what you're about, knowing the kids that you have playing for you, and building on it.
Mm-hmm. Buy-in is a thing too.
Buy-in.
You have to buy in. Football is a simple game. And why more kids don't play it, I don't know, because it's hard to play baseball. You got to play baseball. I mean, it's like playing golf. Listen, I don't become a scratch golfer and not play golf. Football, I can make you a football player if you just bring a couple of things, and that's effort, that's a little bit of toughness, and just a want to about you. Mm-hmm. If you bring those, we can make. I don't care if you're 4'3" or you're 7'5". But what kills me is these kids that say, "Oh, I'm gonna go play basketball, coach," and he's 5'6" and 310 pounds. Mm-hmm. There's no place for you to play basketball. Mm-hmm. You come to the football field, I can put you out there. Or a kid that's 5'9" and only weighs 135 pounds. I can find a place for him. If he'll go hit you, I'll put you on the field. So that's what people don't realize. Yes, football's tough, but you can make football players out of not a real good athlete,
right?
And that's basketball. You need to be in the gym shooting. You need to do that kind of stuff. Football, you just got to have some want to.
Favorite movie?
Top Gun.
First one,
the old one, fella. The new one's a good one. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
but Dave, listen, I can remember growing up, sitting in a chair watching. I thought I was going to be the coolest guy. I was going to be a fighter pilot, and I was going to.
I had the motorcycle.
Man. I had it all, man.
Did you go to Walmart and get the fake Ray-Bans?
I had the Ray-Bans. Yes. I had it all, man. Top Gun.
My head was too big for the Ray-Bans. I had like the big welder's goggles.
Well, I got the Beetlejuice head, so I got this body and a little bitty head. So there you go. You know what I'm saying? But no, hey, Top Gun, and not a lot of people. There's other movies out there that are really good movies, but that's just something that sticks out. When I can remember being in the late 80s, or I lived in Nebraska with my grandparents, and we loved Top Gun.
Well, I'm going to throw this out there. Todd's kind of pulling the chain here, but Nebraska.
Yep.
Let's stop there. Cornhusker.
Yep.
Greatest football dynasty I can remember.
Tom Osborne.
Was it Remington? Let's see, Tom Osborne, Makovica. Gosh, I can just go on and on. And you was out there in Nebraska Cornhusker territory, and then you end up at Hart County. Give us the story.
Military. Dad was military. Moved around. Mom loved it here. I'm just giving a quick thing. I've been everywhere. I've lived in Germany twice. No, he was military. He was Army.
Army.
Yep. Lived in Germany twice. I was fortunate to have good grandparents who would take me in when I didn't need to be somewhere. And so I lived in Nebraska off and on through my dad's career. You know, he'd go to Iraq and I hate to be this way, but I got in some trouble and got kicked out of military school and went back home to Nebraska when they were in Germany. But
it's not how you start; it's how you finish.
It's how you finish. Exactly right. And it's made me who I am. And everything that's happened has happened for a reason.
Absolutely.
But Nebraska is a great place. I've always said, and when I was getting ready to get on the fire department, my uncle was on the fire department, and he owns a fire investigating business, making big money investigating fires for insurance companies. I was this close. I'm telling you, if I had not passed the test, I was going to Nebraska. I was gone. And the good Lord stepped in and said, "No, you ain't going." Mm-hmm. And I got hired on the fire department, and it kept me here.
In Elizabethtown.
But my family, I love Nebraska. I love football. And baseball's a big thing. And listen, there's another thing that's real big that y'all ain't talking about that's big in Nebraska and Iowa and those guys, and that's wrestling.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you, I know everybody in Hart County loves basketball and, you know, they're loving football, but, hey, that gym packs when we have a wrestling meet.
Really?
Yes.
Excellent.
And
see, that's something we missed out on. I think it was just starting at Barron with Coach Belding and some of those guys were getting, but we never had the wrestling presence.
Well, when you
which
go to
would make you tougher and stronger and mindset.
And you know, let's back up just a little bit. And you prodded me about Nebraska. Let's talk about Todd Osborne. If you guys followed Nebraska back in those days, okay, you'll remember, and you may not be able to answer this, but I'll tell you what was the one thing he prided himself on.
I think if you ask me, it was we're going to be so much physically more dominant than the people that we line up against, and we're going to whip you on the line of scrimmage.
Great answer. But no, he prided himself in walk-ons. He had more walk-ons on his football team than anybody. He had more walk-on starters than anybody.
Okay.
He was a big believer in walk-ons. And the reason why was because back then they didn't have the social medias, and but he was also big about going into Crenshaw in LA, the Miami, and getting kids to come to Nebraska, which was hard to get. He was recruiting kids that people weren't taking a chance on. But he had the number one walk-on program for I can't tell how many years. He had the number one amount of walk-ons, and what he was getting is he was getting kids that wanted to be Nebraska kids, which you've heard me say earlier. I want kids that want to play for Hart County, and that's what he was getting: homegrown kids that would die on that football field because they wanted to play for Nebraska. And so in the end, that's really truthfully when I think about that era and I think about the guys I know and that played there and what I got to be around and see was those guys wanted to be played, and it's still that way. For a sense it is, but not like it was. I mean, Tom had a way of making you want to be there, and I remember going to a couple games and you know when the stadium at Lincoln is full, it's the second largest city in the state.
Yeah, it is. The thing's shut down everywhere.
It does.
I thought Scott Frost would do a great job coming in from Central Florida, and I don't know. I guess it's just.
Once again, we could talk football day long. Guys.
I know.
Scott would. Everybody would have thought, okay, but what Scott want to do? He wanted to do what they did in Florida. And he wanted to do what they did in Oregon. And guess what you can't get no more? I mean, how tough is it to go to a kid that lives in Florida and say, hey, man,
come to Nebraska.
Come to Nebraska where it's cold.
Some corn.
And we can't go with our shirts off. Or do you want to go on the beach to Florida State or Miami or whatever? And Ohio State, and I always said, if Nebraska's going to be good again, which I want them to be. I mean, they break my heart every year. They got to go mimic what Harbaugh's doing at Michigan, and they got to do what they're doing at Ohio State, and that's run the ball and play good defense.
That's right.
And they got to get back to that. And so, but that's who am I? I coach football at Hart County High School. So
you talked about being from a military family.
Yep.
Tell us about Chad Griffin growing up. How difficult was it? I'm assuming you were moved a lot.
I was. I was fortunate that I wasn't moved like military families are now.
Yeah.
We served my dad served 2 stints he was over there more, but we lived in Germany twice. Once when I was about 6, we lived in a place called Wildflicken, which is up in the mountains. And I can remember we shared a house with a family. And truthfully, we shared a house. Like you walked in the house and we lived on the first floor and they lived on the second floor. It was a neat experience. So I mean, we didn't live on post. We lived in the German community. We'd walk to the grocery store in the German. I remember the one thing I do remember about Germany that I loved so much was pommes frites, which is in a sense it's a French fry that you eat with mayonnaise. Okay, but it's
I'm out.
Hey, it tastes much better over in Germany than it does over here. Okay, I don't know why, but it does. I lived there for a while. Lived on Fort Knox. Went to Mudge Elementary for a while. So I'm military.
Right.
After we left Wild Flick and we moved back to Fort Knox, I played Little League at Ratcliffe. We played for the Cowboys.
So you got old enough to start Little League when you were back in the States.
Yep, back in the States. Okay. I did play, and then we went back to Germany, and I played football over there. And one thing people don't realize about me, and they hear me talk, is I was fortunate to play on a all-star team, military all-star team over in Germany at Ramstein Air Force Base.
Wow.
So the military does their own...
But they're classified
sports
as Europe when you're in the Little League World Series.
Yeah.
So there's different parts of the World Series. You can make the World Series that you just may not see on TV. And so we were pretty good, and we got beat by Chinese Taipei, because how that works, you got to come out of the European pool, and you got to come out of the American, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so we didn't get, but baseball was my sport.
I would say coming from Radcliffe and Ramstein, you was around some tough cats.
And so baseball was my sport, and we moved back here the last time, and I'm gonna tell this, and it's just it's a funny story. And this guy that I'm gonna tell, he ended up being a great football player. He's a great person. His kid's going to Central Hardin right now. But my dad, and we talked about this, I got in some trouble, and I got sent back over state. I wasn't allowed to go to military schools no more. And my grandfather took me in, and we lived in a small town. He worked for a company called G&G. And they lived in a small town in Blair, Nebraska, North Omaha. And I was living with them. And I had played baseball, we played football, and there was a kind of like an AAU football team there. This was big back then, called the Gladiators. And I had made that. And Dad was in Iraq serving. And so anyway, they were coming back. And I had just made the Gladiators. Mom comes back home and says, when Dad gets back, we're moving to Fort Knox. And I was unhappy. I had just got a Creighton Prep, which is like Trinity here. Mm-hmm. I had just got a scholarship to play baseball there, go to high school there, and I did not want to leave. They had to drag me screaming and kicking. I lived with my grandparents for 2 years, and I just wanted to stay there. Mm-hmm. And it was tough. And to top it off, I'll never forget, I was sour. Had to leave all my friends again. And of course, this time I was 13.
Is that also tough for Mama?
It is.
Knowing that her baby wants to...
Yeah.
Nah, my mom was pretty straightforward. You're gonna come. It's time you come back home. It's time to come back home. And my grandparents didn't need to raise me. They were older. They needed to do their thing.
Yeah.
So my granddad said, "Well, let them stay through summer." And they came to E-Town, and they came real close to buying a house in E-Town district. Which, gosh dang, I'm so glad they did. And for all you Panther fans out there, I did not want to be a Panther. So anyway. They bring me down there, and it's like one day before football practice starts, and so they bring my grandparents bring me home, they bring me to Kentucky, and my dad says, "Well, in the morning, I'm taking you to football practice," and so we start out, and for those of you who don't know, this is irrelevant, but we drive, and it's 35 minutes from where we live to West Hardin.
Stevensburg, Kentucky.
Wow.
And there's pig farms, and there's nothing there. And I get out of the truck when he drops me off, and the coach is not there. Which I thought the coach, there was a fella standing there by the name of Jeff Meredith. He was in 7th grade, and I was in 8th grade. He had a full beard. I called him coach. And he said, "I'm not the coach. I'm just in 7th grade." He was 6'3" and had a full beard. And I looked at my dad, and I said, "What have you got me into?" I got to ride the bus 35 minutes one way. And to come to find out, God put me in the right place, because we went undefeated that year, first undefeated middle school team they had, and I was with a good group of guys, and we did a lot of good things at Central Hardin together. And so to tell you how it was growing up with Chad Griffin, it was great. I tell you why, because I got to experience things other people didn't get to experience. Mm-hmm. How many people can say they've lived in Germany and they've been here and they've done this and they've went to this castle and they've done this, and it made me who I am. I'm not afraid to. And the old saying is, "Come on and go with me." If you say, "Hey, come on, go with me," my wife makes fun of me, but I'll jump on an airplane and we'll go wherever you want to go. Mm-hmm. And I've met a lot of people since I've been in Hart County. They ain't left Hart County.
So you talked about moving to Central Hardin, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So you did your high school career was in Central Hardin, playing career. So at what point in there? Well, I assume before we go there, did you have ambitions to to go to the college level to play?
Of course, everybody
football?
does. Everybody does. Like I said, when I moved here, I was a baseball player, but that played football. Played in the ABC down there. We went to, and I just didn't. Baseball just it kind of distances. I don't know why. Okay, I was good. I was. I mean, I was good, but what you learn as moving around, sometimes you got to be really good to come in and take somebody else's spot.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that kid's been there doing his thing, and so I just lost interest. And Mike Lewis got a hold of me early on when I moved down here and got me in the weight room, and I just kind of I quit baseball. But yes, to answer your question, I did, and everybody thinks they want to go play college sports. Okay, but you don't really know until you go what it is.
Mm-hmm. What's the old saying? Everybody wants the kingdom rewards, but they don't want to pay the kingdom price.
And that is 100% true.
Because it is a tough deal to go play college football.
At
any level, it is tough.
I tell my guys this all the time. It's a job.
It's a job.
And
that's exactly what my brother said.
It's a job.
He said it felt like I was playing a game.
That's
a sport,
job.
And then I went to having a clock in, clock out job.
You do. And they own you. I mean, if you go up there and they're paying you, they own you. And I'm not being mean. I'm not trying to discourage people from wanting to do it. But it takes a special person. And I wasn't that person. I had a really good high school football career. I think I ended up, I think I finished with 235 tackles my senior year, ran for 1,000 yards. I mean, I had a good career. I was a good high school football player. I was strong, and I was fortunate to have good guys around me, and we were good. And but when I got to college, it just and I had other things on my mind.
So during youth, middle school, high school, did you have a coach? We try to talk about all things coaching,
yes,
everything about a coach. At what point in there were them seeds planted?
Well, I want to say this as he answers this and thinks about it. He mentioned earlier, as we were introducing ourselves, Mike Lewis, Keith Graham, Chris Bauer,
Greg Kavanaugh, Chris Reed,
Chris Reed, John Ballard, a guy I know from Ethan. I mean, Coach Vincel, the fishing man that took you fishing. I was blessed to have some of these same people in my life. And I'm going to say this as I look into the camera. I had a dog, and his name was Kobe, and Chris Bauer was one of the greatest guys I ever met. And I said, Chris, I'm going to a motocross race. I said, could you come this weekend and feed my dog? And he said, sure, Jeff. Do you know who came with him? This fella right here. This is a small world. A guy from Ramstein Air Force or Army base in Germany is now feeding my dog with Chris Bauer. So as we say this, it gives me coaches because you're fixing to mention some of the people in your life that's also been part of my life, and I don't even know you.
Yeah, and I don't know you. And that's for what you people don't realize is we've talked and we've realized how close we were.
Yeah.
But to answer your question is, yes, there's one guy, Mike Lewis.
Was his dog well behaved?
Yes.
Good dog. Pretty dog.
Hey, yeah. And I'm a lover of all labs. I love labs. Okay, so but to answer your question is Mike Lewis and guys, I can go on and talk about this guy for
wonderful man.
Okay, but there's been a lot of guys that touched my and Chris Bauer, not so much as a coach, but as just a person. And I said to you earlier, he's like an older brother for me. He took me under his wing and just I was really fortunate to have that guy in my life all the way through my life. Even when I didn't deserve him in my life, he was in my life.
That kind of guy.
Okay, and that's the way about Mike. And you know he talked about Greg Kavanaugh, who went on to coach at Greenwood and had really good success there. And he's now at Warren Central as a D coordinator with I'm bad
Nelson?
about names. Mark Nelson. And you know Keith Graham. We talk about Keith Graham calls me. He'll text me once or twice a week. And
worked with him at Bluegrass Middle.
Okay, and you know he was our defensive coordinator. Went on to Grayson County, have success. He Bardstown Bethlehem AD for a long time. Was he a
part of that great 3 years at Grayson
County? He was the head coach there.
Yeah. They ran like a flex bone or
they ran a single wing.
Single wing.
They ran single wing, and he had Big Lou with him. Mike Lewis, we called him Big Lou.
Yep.
So I've been, and I think if you talk to anybody that's in the coaching industry or in football, that's what coaching's about. And listen, I didn't have a bad dad. My dad was a great guy. Okay, he was a military guy, and he was gone. But I didn't need another father figure in my life. I had a good father figure in my life. But I had great father figures in my life because of those guys.
Right.
And that's kind of what I want. And I say this to all my parents, and I truly wholeheartedly mean it. And sometimes it doesn't work out. But when I want to be those guys, I want to be Mike Lewis and Chris Bauer and Chris Reed and those guys and Keith Graham. And I tell parents when they come, I don't want your kid because I want football players. I want your kid to come be a football player for me and be a better person when he leaves us. And that I truly wholeheartedly mean that, because that's what happened to me. Because I really can't imagine where I would be if Mike Lewis hadn't put his hands on me. Okay, if he hadn't have grabbed me and made me what I am, and everybody that was with him and everybody that I was fortunate to be around, I can't imagine where I'd be today.
Can I say this?
Yes, sir.
Mike Lewis probably, I'd step out on a limb in those days. Man made $2,000 a year as a coach, but look at the testimony that's being given to Mike Lewis as a man. Coaches aren't in this for the money, unless you're Calipari or some of these other guys that's making those seven figures. Mike Lewis did it because he wanted to create men from young men. And that's the greatest testimony a coach can receive. And just remember, you have Mike Lewis in you, and you're building these young men in Hart County, and in 20 years, 10 years, they're going to be saying the same thing about you.
Well, that's what I want. And not because I
do.
want them to say that about me.
Because I'm ready to go play for Hart County right now, and I don't even have any eligibility left.
Hey, let me say this to you guys, okay? First of all,
glad to wear it.
I talk fast, and I ramble. I
thought I did, but I'm actually slow.
And I get on rants, so just interrupt me sometimes. But what you said is, it's not because I want people. I don't want a legacy. I don't want that. I just want people to be better because of I was good to them, and I want them because we live in a cruel world.
Absolutely.
And you asked me about
what's the number one litmus test? Was the world a better place because you passed through it?
And there's a time in my life where I can say no.
And me too.
Okay. And I said it. You know, we could go on. I could tell you, but I did Fields of Faith this year, and guys, listen, I'm not one that goes around and talks about my faith. Okay, I didn't grow up in church. I grew up around church. My parents, we were military. We moved and
saw lots of faiths.
I did,
didn't you? Yeah.
But my grandparents were Catholic, and so when I was with them, I would go to church with them. But I didn't. I see people grow up in churches here. I see them grow up with a church family. I didn't have that, and so long. But not to get off track. But Curtis Wright calls me and says, "Hey, Coach, will you speak at Fields of Faith for us?" I'm like, I don't like speaking in public. I'm like, sure. Of course, this is like beginning of football season when he asked me. So. Like a month and a half.
Was this season?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
We're getting ready to go play. So it was like 7 weeks later. I done forgot all about it. Well, he makes a pamphlet up, right?
Oh, mercy.
And it says, Coach Griffin's going to give his testimony. And my wife, this is guys, she looked at me and said, Chad, I don't know your testimony. And because I just don't talk about stuff. But I do to my players. And for some reason, I called him up and I said, Curtis, what are you talking about? Give my testimony. You said when you speak. I thought I was going to give a couple words.
The terminology.
Yeah. Well, no. He said, no, Coach. I want you to tell them what Christ means to you. How has He walked in your life with you? And it made me sit down and think. It did. All this stuff that you guys have asked me, I didn't really put together until my wife said, Chad, you need to sit down and really put this on paper and draw it out. And I did. And even when I haven't deserved Him, even when I haven't deserved the people in my life, I've been fortunate that He's put them in my life when I needed them the most. Now, when I spoke that night, that's what I wanted people to understand. And I'm talking to an audience. You don't have to always. He will speak to you, whenever at times, and you may not notice it until you reflect. And as reflecting, I realized that He put me where I am today, and He put the people in my life that has made me who I am today for a reason. And I don't want to get off in a big rant, but
you can.
But that is what made me who I am. And listen, and I'll be the first to tell you, I don't go to church every Sunday, and it's shame on me, and this and that. And that's just how I grew up. But He was always in my life, and the problem was I never realized until my wife made me sit down and reflect. I didn't listen sometimes. And I said earlier, I said, man, there's a time in my life where you didn't want to know Chad Griffin. Mm-hmm. But he put those people in my life that made sure I got on the right track. And didn't give up on me. My sophomore year when I got hurt and I just quit doing stuff, and I quit going to football practice, and I wanted to hang out with girlfriends, I wanted to do this, man showed up on my front door. Man showed up on my front door and said, that's not where you need to be. You have a team that you committed yourself to, and you've worked hard, and just because you're hurt don't mean you don't come and support your team. And he got me out of the house. And that's the things that people don't realize. Yes, Mike Lewis did that, but God put him in my life for a reason.
Right.
He did. And so to tell you that is Mike, to answer your question, I know it's long, but I've been blessed. I've been blessed to have great mentors in my life. And so what you said earlier, I don't want to die and people talk about Chad Griffin. That's not what I want. I just want people to be better because they were around me.
Right.
And that's my goal. And I tell my coaches that we can be hard. I can, and I did it today. A kid wasn't giving me what he had, and I can call you out, and I can be I can be the devil because it's in me. But I'm gonna love you the very next time, and I'm gonna tell you I love you.
Sounds a lot like somebody else I know.
But you know, there was a in 2018, my third season here, we went 3-7 my first year, and when I took the job, Coach Anthony Boone, who was the head coach here, I called him before I took the job, and he said, "Coach, you won't win a game," and we won 3, and I was blessed. Next year, I thought, man, we're gonna be really good, and a Metcalf, LJ, and them guys, that was LJ's third year. They came down in the second game of the season and took our soul, and we won 2 games that year, and we were supposed to be better. So going into my third year, 2 college kids contacted me out of Western Kentucky, and they said, "We want to follow you and do a documentary about Hart County football." And I said, "Seriously?" Like, no, yeah, it's part of our class, but come to find out, she was from Central Hardin. Didn't know her, but she was from Central Hardin, and they came down and they followed us, and they asked me in the interview I haven't really shared it with a lot of people, but it's out there, and she asked me, and I told her, and it's the God's honest truth. My kids have been neglected by me. I have told my football players I love them more than I have my own kids. Because that's how I knew my mom loved me, and I want my kids to know I love them. But that's just, I want to portray to people that it's okay to be loved. It's okay to be bad, and I still love you. It's okay to do wrong things, I still love you. So I end every day as I love you.
That's good.
Mm-hmm. And so that's the people that I just mentioned has made me who I am. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's somebody in there that I didn't really talk about a lot, and that's my parents. They were tough. They're not tough in a way of I couldn't go do things. I mean, this is not a bad thing. I can tell you in one hand how many times me and my mom have hugged. I knew she loved me. I didn't need her to tell me she loved me, you know. And so they played a very big part in my dad and my mom and my grandfather in who I am today. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been blessed. I have, and wouldn't change nothing.
So it's obvious that early on you learned, well, you perceived yourself the power and the influence that a coach has. I was telling Jeff the last episode we was talking about it. I was one of those kids that grew up in church. Mm-hmm. I just grew up there, so it was my whole culture. In fact, it kind of surrounded that nucleus. And still does, and I wish it was the same for everybody, but sadly it isn't.
It's not.
But I told Jeff, I tried to get him to address this, and he did his level best. But it's a hard one. But this is one of the things that's interesting me. And Brian, I asked you to get involved too last time, and you wouldn't do it either. But I can, as a kid, I was at church on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday, and I had the same pastor my whole youth, all the way up. And I can remember more conversations and words that a coach had with me than I can my pastor. And I'm not saying that my pastor wasn't hitting it over the fence every week about talking about the single most important thing on the planet. But a coach has such a great level of influence over a young life.
You know.
And I just find that astounding, and that's why that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this podcast.
Right,
is because it has such power.
Who's your first role models usually? If it's not your dad or an uncle or a friend, it's a coach.
It's a coach.
I mean, man, he's got cool clothes.
Of course, I looked up to my daddy.
Yeah. Well, yeah. But a coach, I mean, if you're playing every sport and you start at a young age, you're coached by a lot of different guys, and and sometimes coaches don't understand, and I'm guilty of this, and I'm sure you are as well, but you may not be. We have the power to make, and we have the power to break. And I did a horrible job, and I said that on the last time, that early in my career, and I told you, and this is about you, not me, but the losses absolutely ate me to the point that I couldn't enjoy winning, because winning, I was like, all right, let's celebrate, let's get on, I got to watch. But the losses, they killed, they gnawed. Like you said, LJ and Metcalf took your soul.
Took our soul.
People don't understand.
They did, boy. They took our soul.
It's a once a week.
We're gonna try to get LJ in.
Hey,
It'll be a good one to get.
It's a once a week battle, and you either win it or lose it. And then for 7 days, you've either on top of the world or it does take it.
Well, and I could. I'm gonna say 2 things here, and one of them is about LJ. But what you're saying, listen. What people don't realize, I get asked a lot of times, Coach, what do you do to make people buy? Listen, coaching is it's kind of like playing football. It's 90% mental and 10% toughness. Okay, coaching is the same way. It's 90% buying, and then the rest of it is just but buying into you as a person.
Right.
If they don't want to play for you, they're not going to play. Period. They're not, and they may play, but they ain't going to do what you want them to do. Or it's going to be, you have to get those. And in this day and age, that's harder to do.
Yes.
Okay? Because there's more single family parents out there, people with no dads. I've had kids that didn't have, why they got up and came to school, I don't know, because they want to come to football every day. And that says a lot, not just about me, but about my staff. But I will say this, you talk about the wins and losses, and we went through early on. I told you about my wife and how hard it was, and her crying at nights, and that 2018 team, we should have been good. We had 17 seniors, and in the scrimmage against Grayson County, Chandler Wilcoxon I've never seen anybody break their ankle. No time he has a catastrophe and just has to have pins. Anyway, if you told me we'd done without Chandler, I'd have said you're crazy. Well, we had to play Taylor County the first game over in a bowl game, and had Metcalf week 2. And Metcalf was not real good that year. It was one of LJ's down years, and they were tough. They were just like LJ, They were tough and physical.
Tough kids.
They did but they just didn't have very good talent. But we got waxed in week 1 by very good. Taylor County went on to semi-state.
Yeah, Tyler was good.
I think they beat us 56-0. We couldn't do nothing right. And I'm sitting thinking, man, I got 17. I literally at that time I thought, man, if I don't have a winning season this year, this may not be for me. We go to Metcalf and we're struggling. And I mean, I'm talented. I have a kid by the name of Dave Wood who can play. I mean, he could flat out play up. He came to us from Louisville, but Dad was from around here. They moved back here, and we're just struggling. I think we're down 13-6, and we can't do anything. And it was right before halftime, and I called a quick pitch play that we run, and Dave took it to the house, and we went in halftime up 13-12, and we come out. Dave Wood takes it to the house on kickoff return. We go on to win the game 42-12. But the moral of my story is, I'm going to tell you this: if Metcalf had beat us that night, we wouldn't have went 7-3. We wouldn't have had a winning record. Mm-hmm. It's the way they took our soul.
It's that fine, isn't it?
The way they took our soul the year before, they gave us our soul the next. I'm not being mean. It's just the truth. It's just amazing how that can happen. And we've talked about it as coaches and stuff like that. There's been turning points, but that was one turning point that in my coach career in 19 years that I can remember. That I remember standing on the sideline, and Marcus Cowherd, who's been with me from day one here, I looked at Sebo and I said, "Man, if we don't win this game, Coach, I don't know what I can't connect."
What do you say?
I'm not doing it. It's me. It's not them. It's me, because we're talented enough. We should win, and we won. And hey, we went on 7 games. And shouldn't have. We weren't 7-game win. We didn't expect to win 7 games. We were hoping to be 5-5. You know what I'm saying? Just middle of the road. And we ended up beating Russell County, who was a really good football team that year. In the last game to give us 7 wins. And
Coach Sharp.
Yeah, Bill Sharp at that time. And Bill Sharp, that's another man that I have
He's the one that stole my soul. And that was the night I knew it was over for me. Because we were on the edge, as you were saying. It could make or break us. And anyway, I know that feeling, what it feels like.
Okay, how did you know that was the game that was going to make or break?
I mean, okay, guys, I don't know how Chad's scheduled, but
Tell
as a
me
coach,
about a coach's heart going into that game. What made you think that?
You try to schedule 3 games you know you can win or should win. 3 that's a toss up, and 3 that like ugh. And so in a season, I mean, I wasn't privy or given I had to play Bowling Green, and we had to play Central. I mean, we were playing people that were physically better than us. So we had to win the Russell County games. We had to win the Metcalf games and things like. And then Metcalf, I had Larry Harbison.
Yeah, Larry. Yeah.
You're talking about a soul student. But anyway, to answer the question, and Chad, this is your interview, not mine. But you piggyback off this. What gets you is, am I on my game to where when a game comes down, when the talent's equal, or when all things are put out there, I'm making a difference for my team to make sure they have an opportunity to win. And then when you get trounced, that's what stills I mean, you tell me how you feel about things.
How did you
I know because I want to say I'm a winner. I want to be a winner.
All coaches want to be a winner. Yeah.
And so you get caught.
Let me ask this a different way. So the first year you faced LJ, when he stole your soul.
That was the second year here.
Yeah, second year. Okay. So how did you know then that this was going to be a game changer for your season?
Because how it unfolded, how it went.
Yeah.
You know, that year too, we had to play we had to play a Allen County Scottsville when they were really good. Had a real good quarterback, and they beat us real good week 1. Everybody had this hype. You know, I was new the first year. We won 3 games. Nobody expected us. We beat a really good Evanston County team who we had no business beating. Right. No business beating. I mean, we were down. Some things, the ball bounced our way, which has got to bounce your way to beat teams that are better than you. And we beat Todd County Central, and we beat Convernon. Those 2 teams I think we should have beat, but then we ended up beating Evanston County. And everybody worked hard in the weight room. I had buy-in. I had kids coming in at 5 o'clock in the morning who played basketball to lift weights, and LJ will tell you that year, I think it was 2016, 17 would be the year. He wasn't real talented. He was not that. I mean, but they beat us 42-7. It was a 13-7 game at halftime. And we were in it, and we just came out there, and we laid down. And it just spiraled downhill. I mean, you know, and I'm a new coach, and there's all this excitement. And when you reflect back on that kind of stuff, you realize then that if we would have beat Metcalf that year, we would have won 4 or 5 more games. I'm telling you that. Mm-hmm. And vice versa the next year. And it's kind of what Coach said just a minute ago is, you want to be the difference maker. When all things are equal, you want to be the difference maker. But once again, being the difference maker, what I talked about earlier, is buying. Mm-hmm. And so they have to drink my Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. Okay? They have to drink my Kool-Aid or it's not going to work. And I had went, and when I got there, and I can tell the story, I had to go get John Shoulders to come play for me and Chandler Wilcox. I had to go search those kids out, and for them to give me everything they had, and we had only won 5 games, and going into my 3rd year, their senior season, and I'm sitting there thinking, man, maybe I'm not the guy for this job. I mean, I really, because they should have been better than what we were, and it just like it clicked. That win it clicked, and we went on to beat a Barstown Bethlehem team that was really good that year. And Chuck Feist did an interview after that, and it just like you could see the buy-in. You could see everybody believing in what we were doing, and they were believing in the toughness part of it, and it switched. That game that I credit that 7 wins on, and the buy-in for Coach Griffin and my staff. Was that game at LJ? Because if LJ would have beat us with he didn't win a game that year. That's how they were not good, and they were in the ball game with us until we finally decided to do what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the discussion and gained some valuable insights. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a rating and review. We'll be back very soon with part 2 of the interview with Chad Griffin, so be sure to stay tuned. You're listening to First Down and Life.